Hi, and welcome back to my little corner on the internet. Hello everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today I'm excited about this video. I was doing some planning for it, and I've got this wonderful little stack of books here, which I'm calling my sort of literary curriculum of sorts. And essentially, this is my sort of guide or take on some fiction and nonfiction books that I highly recommend if you're wanting to get into the sort of literary books kind of realm. Because I remember when I was really getting into my reading habits and I was discovering literary fiction and contemporary fiction, and I was getting into nonfiction as well. It was a fun time, and I know that it's become a very, very big part of the publishing industry, and I thought I should help out, and I'm curated a stack of nonfiction and fiction books for that sort of genre to get you started if you're interested in getting into that. So we're just gonna get straight into it. I have notes pulled up in front of me because I have sort of ideas that I want to hit so that everything kind of makes sense. So we'll start off with some nonfiction picks and then we'll get into the fiction. But we've got a stack of 6 books today to get through, but I'll do my best to keep it cohesive and everything like that. So I'm gonna clip my mic as per usual and hope for the best. Hopefully that one's okay. To start off with, I have Just Kids by Patti Smith. This is a very, very popular book, especially amongst creators, and my copy is falling to pieces. But that's okay. I think that there's a charm to that, and I'm fine with it. It's well loved, and I can't wait to read it again someday. So I highly recommend this book as a piece of nonfiction. This is a memoir, and it follows Patti Smith's sort of beginning of her life and her career, and a lot of this book is also about her relationship with Robert, who was her photographer, best friend, and they were also just deeply in love. This is just, and it's an amazing book, especially if you are a creative person. I absolutely fell in love with this book, but I want to be careful to not reduce this book to it being, a memoir of her love life and her relationship with Robert, because it is so much more than that. This book is so much about, young adulthood and the act of becoming and understanding who you are, and just, letting life happen before you as you unravel and you start to understand parts of yourself within this sort of art world in New York, being young and broke and in love. And she writes with such honesty and with tinges of deep sentimentality. It's beautifully done, and I absolutely loved it. And I think it's a great place to start, as it almost feels fictitious, but it's not. It's her actual life, and I think it's a great sort of peek into her life, especially as a young adult reading this, realizing that you don't need to have it all figured out. We're all learning how to live life because we're all here for the first time together, and I think this was just really beautifully done and really well written. And I think the reason why I recommended this book is because it had such a visceral impact on me. The second I finished it, I wanted to go outside and create things and try things and just do, So I highly, highly recommend this book. I took it with me everywhere, including a large body of water. So it is worth the hype, I promise you. Everyone talks about this book. I really can't wait to get into her other works. I really want to read M Train and Red Angels, I think it is. But yes, love, 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 love. Next, I have discussed this book as well before, but I think to get into the sort of literary realm, especially within nonfiction and getting into contemporary fiction, I think getting into essays was such a fun new realm for me, and I'm just so glad that I opened myself up to those kind of books. And today I want to recommend Trick Mirror: Reflections on Self-Delusion by Tolentino. She is a writer for the New Yorker, if I'm not mistaken, and this is a series of essays that kind of touch on the impacts of the internet, patriarchy, and pop culture on identity. A lot of literary and contemporary works sort of focus on nowadays. These essays are kind of such a wonderful combination of her wit and her very honest and unique voice. She writes with such rigor, and it's such a well done collection of essays, and it's very self-aware in the way that she touches on, internet culture and feminism and religion, reality TV, and how it all sort of trickles in to acts of self-reflection and identity and personal connection with the self and perception. Each essay, they're all sort of standalones and they dive into different sort of ideas, but she kind of poses this question throughout though, where it kind of touches on this idea of how we're meant to know who we are when everything around us is meant to distort our self-image in some way, which I think is so interesting. And a lot of these essays, they can be quite intense and quite, hard-hitting, but a lot of the time they're also like very funny and witty. So I think this just kind of encapsulates the modern sphere of this day and age, which I think is kind of necessary for us to sort of, how do I put it? For us to be able to properly digest a lot of contemporary fiction that is being published nowadays, especially within socio-cultural, political context and everything like that. This is just a wonderful collection of essays. If you're not into that, don't force yourself, but if you do want to get into this sort of realm of essays, this is great. Next, I want to recommend In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. I remember reading this many years ago, and I was so intrigued by the formatting of this book. This is non-fiction, and it's a memoir of Carmen Maria Machado's relationship with this very volatile woman, and the entirety of the sort of retelling of this relationship that she's had is told through a series of metaphors throughout this book that's broken up into chapters. So, for example, it's always set up as dream house as blank. And I thought that was such a new and engaging way to sort of present a story and a retelling of a part of someone's life. I have to be upfront and just say that a lot of the topics in this book are quite dark and intense. So I would look up sort of, triggers, because it does touch on very violent and dark themes. But I think it's such a well-made and well-written book that I think many people should read. The sort of idea of using metaphors and fictional cliches and stereotypes and fairy tales to retell reality it was just so interesting and engaging, and I suppose they kind of posed a new means to present a memoir. Now we're going to get into some fiction, which I'm excited about. I really love these 3 books. One of these I've been hyping up quite a lot in recent videos, but I don't care. I'm including it here because I have to now. But anyways, next I want to talk about Breasts and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami. I mentioned in my last video, I'm actually going to see Mieko Kawakami in the flesh next month. And am I excited about this. I can't wait. I'm really keen. But anyways, this was, I think, my first Kawakami book that I had ever read. And I absolutely fell in love with it. I really love and admire Japanese literature quite a lot. And this book is just marvelous, I have to say. And I think, before I get into it, I think one thing that is really important if you're wanting to get into literary and contemporary fiction, I think this genre gives you so much opportunity to read so widely and internationally especially, and you can read and learn so many sort of different experiences. This book was originally published as 2 parts, but now it's published as a whole piece. But this book explores the idea of women, the body, and beauty and expectation, and how it impacts the woman itself, The first part of the book concerns itself with one's relationship with her own body and augmentation of her body, and how sort of societal expectations kind of impact and trickle down into one's self-perception and identity. And it's a really interesting exploration of and depiction of self-critique and the body itself, which hence the first part, breasts. The second book concerns itself with assisted reproduction and a woman's decision to whether or not to have a child alone and independently. And it's a really well-written and very poignant sort of novella, I suppose, of a woman's reflection on what is expected of her as a woman, and reflections on womanhood. How does that impact your self-perception? And again, it all kind of trickles back into the woman and the body itself, which I think was so wonderful, and it was so well done. Kawakami's writing is just, it's beautiful. I've read, I think, everything that she's published so far. she writes like, so it's so quietly devastating, but she's able to turn like even the most ordinary moments into like very beautifully and well thought out sentences, which I think matters so much. I think not everything has to be an extraordinary event for you to write about it. I think being able to write about the little parts of your life and someone's life and just existing with a lot of attention and being very meticulous about that is so important to telling a real story, a realistic story, especially things concerning, you know, women and the female body and identity and self-perception, all of that. I love it so much. Next, I want to discuss Either Or by Elif Batuman, which is, I suppose, technically a sort of sequel, a continuation of The Idiot by Elif Batuman, which I have mentioned quite a lot. It's one of my favorite books as well. But I wanted to also put some light into Either Or because this was also such a great book. Like, I absolutely loved it. And I know I keep saying this shit, guys. Like, I get it. And I want to reread The Idiot and Either Or. But for some reason, my dumbass just keeps picking up more and more books and my stack keeps piling up. And anyways, let's just get into this book, okay? It follows Selin, and she's sort of navigating in her university years her life with literature and philosophy in Europe, and her sort of grappling with these very inevitable situations regarding love, relationships, identity, anxieties, adulthood. And she does this so well in both this book and in The Idiot. But I think what makes this book so special is that Batuman takes her interiority and her thoughts, her intellectual aspects and her reflections and her ideas very seriously. It's a beautiful look inward rather than outward, if that makes sense. A lot of the time we can be looking at the world around us and reflecting then on how that impacts us rather than starting from the inside and how that gets put out. I think she does a wonderful job with this character specifically, with really looking inwards and taking it seriously as, you know, as a main aspect of the book. She doesn't take Selin's sort of intellectualism and her psychology as a quirk or as a side piece. It is sort of the entire focus of the book. It's very central to the book, which I find personally, I love character-driven books. I love reading about just characters, just living life, figuring shit out, and just seeing how certain writers kind of dive into certain ideas and certain parts of the self. And I think she does a really great job at that in this book. I think the most interesting part about this book is that the title comes from Kierkegaard, I don't know if I'm saying that right, who also wrote a book called Either Or. So it kind of tackles with these ideas of aesthetics versus the ethics and modes of existence, which I think kind of trickle in very well and kind of translate very well through this book, but in a more modern and contemporary lens, especially through this perspective of a woman in her 20s in university figuring her shit out, which I think is really fun. I saw so much of myself sort of reflected in both books, which honestly I should be including The Idiot here, but again, I just wanted to kind of also bring in this book because we don't talk about it enough. More, I guess, well thought out, intellectual, reflective ideas of life and this human nature itself. And I think this is just the perfect book for that. So then last but not least, I wanted to again mention Saving Agnes by Rachel Cusk. This is my new favorite Rachel Cusk book. Okay, I've read a lot by her, and it is safe to say this is my favorite from all of them thus far. This is actually her debut novel, and it's another one of those books following a woman in her adulthood life, trying to figure her shit out, trying to understand life and herself. So this follows Agnes Day and her sort of grappling with herself and her relationships that she has, her work life, and how every little moment around her sort of profoundly impacts her in many, many ways. And it may seem like a very simple book, kind of straightforward, kind of boring sounding, like it's just a woman figuring her shit out again. Like, I get that, but it's so much more than that, okay? She manages to write about even the most simplest aspects of life and turn it into this sort of wonderful philosophical reflection. It kind of dives into these sort of little gaps in life about the imagined life that you have for yourself versus what you're actually living. And she manages to capture that really suffocating, disorienting feeling of young adulthood so well. It's so well done in this book. And it's a very honest, it's a very, what's the right word to put it? It's like this weird, devastating humor in it that makes it feel very real, and you see so much of yourself reflected in it, especially if you are like a young adult. I absolutely highly recommend this book. And I think once you get into a book such as this, and Cusk in general, you really just get pulled into this sort of genre so much. And I do highly recommend many of her other books too. But I think Cusk in general, honestly, is such a great place to start if you're wanting to get into very reflective books that kind of also incorporate philosophy into helping you understand life and figuring your shit out. I think it's just so fun and so well done. This almost kind of even reminds me of an even more modern and contemporary sort of, I suppose, take, or I guess it kind of extracts from the book Nausea by Jean-Paul, which kind of encapsulates that very existential, nauseating feeling of existing and grappling with freedom and also feeling trapped in the world due to expectations. You know, this just does it all. I need y'all to read this. That's all I gotta say. But yes, that is my little literary curriculum that I've curated to help you guys perhaps get into the sort of contemporary literary realm of books. I have so many books that I could also recommend, but I wanted to kind of narrow it down to the best of my abilities. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and you got some recommendations out of that. And if you guys read or have read any of these, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And just let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, that's kind of all I have to say, really. Feel free to DM me or comment. I'm always here. All my socials are always linked in the description, so you can check that out. But apart from that, I will see you guys in the next video.